This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesianicristo.
And good morning, everyone, and welcome to INC Radio Florida. I'm one of your hosts this morning, Brother Robert Topalis, on a beautiful Florida Saturday. Today, of course, is Saturday, April 26th. It's about 9:31 in the morning here on the East Coast of the United States, which makes it a little bit past 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the evening there in the Philippines and in Asia. So to our viewers that are there, thank you so much for staying up late. And I guarantee you that staying up late today was going to be definitely worth it, because we're going to be talking about a subject that is going to be so near and dear and important to so many of us because we live in such a digital world. But before we get started, I wanted to toss this over to one of our lovely hosts there in Central Florida, Sister Joy. Good morning, Sister Joy. How you doing?
Good morning. Thank you, Brother Robert. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in with us. It's always such a delight to have all of you with us today. It's really a sunny side up here in the District of Florida, because not only is our weather greeting us with the sunshine here, especially here in the central part of Florida where I am I'm in Orlando. But our topic today, brings a bright side, a sunny side up of, talking about we're not just going to just peek into our topic, right? We're not just going to poke around it. We're actually going to investigate and dive into the importance of privacy protection when it comes to our phones. And I think this is just such a, not just an important, but it's also kind of, I think it's a must for all of us, and it doesn't matter how old you are, what category of or season you are in. I think it's really necessary, like what you said, Brother Robert. Right? We all are in a digital world, and I think it's so important that we know and we're aware, we're cognitive of some of these things that we're going to be talking today. So we're really eager to have all of you guys participate with us. So wherever you are joining us from, because we know we have a broad spread of viewers, right? It's all over. We're excited to know where you are, where you're coming from. So make sure that you let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat where you are from. So good afternoon and good evening to all of you. How about an international greeting? I'm going to try. Buenos dias. Guten Morgen, right, on that side. So thank you again for joining us. Let us know where you are from. And I'm excited to actually learn too about some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So you can always learn and grow. So let's definitely dive into it and some of the things that we'll be discussing, because I think I could do a little checkup too on the privacy
Yeah, you
setting.
know what? I think that's going to be one of the things that, if anything comes out of this today, Sister Joy, is that our viewers will actually take a second look at what it is that they're sharing, because as was in the title, our phones know too much. They do.
Yeah.
They know too much about us, and I think that that's one of the dangers, is that people don't really realize how much our phones know about what's going on in our lives. But more importantly, not just what they know, but how they're tracking that and how they're using that information.
Mhm.
That's what we're going to get to the bottom of today. So our phones know too much. Why don't
Do
we
they?
fix that?
They
I
probably
hope
do.
we're going to fix that today, right? Let's take a quick look at what we're going to be presenting today. And of course, like we mentioned today, we're going to be talking about how it is that you can protect your family's digital privacy. And,
That's a
it's
very
such an
important.
important thing. As we mentioned, both Sister Joy and I were talking about how we live in a digital age, which means that all of the information that we walk around, we joke about it all the time, especially when we have some of our younger hosts that are here, or some of our youth that are joining us, about back in the day, right? The old cell phones were just that. They were these massive cell phones. They didn't do anything except make phone calls.
Yeah.
Texting wasn't even a thing.
Give you a
Today,
workout to just answer the phone call. Excuse me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And today, we're literally walking around with these
Yes.
mega powered computers, right,
Oh, good.
in our pockets. And all of the connectivity of these devices, because if you have an iPhone, you may have an iPad, you may have a Mac, and
Wow.
all of these devices talk to each other, but more importantly, they share information. So the information that you're looking up and actually gathering on your Mac or on your iPad is making its way onto your iPhone. Same thing with your Android devices.
They do. They
All
talk
of
to
the
each other.
and all of its interconnectivity. Exactly. Well, they talk to each other more than some people talk to each other. So it's one of the things that we need to be able to understand, though, is how much of this information is actually being collected, what's being collected, and more importantly, what is it we can do about it? Because we have to be able to be
Action plan.
responsible
I
for
like it.
protecting our own data, Sister Joy. So let's hop right in. So, let's get started with how much does my phone actually know? I want you to imagine for a second, Sister Joy. So
Okay.
imagine if you were there sleeping in your bed, nice and comfortable, and there was somebody standing over you. Your
Oh,
favorite
wow.
retail store was standing over you. I know, as creepy as that sounds, right?
That is, yeah,
But
that sounds
standing over you
everybody
and
like, wait a minute, I'm coast and sleeping. So
it basically taking notes, right? Okay, so Sister Joy got up at this time. She went over and she had this for breakfast. She logged on and took a look at this website before she head out for the day. Then she left the house to drop off the kids at this time. And while she was there, she went to social media, liked this post and liked several of these other posts and didn't like this post. And somebody just following you around basically the entire day, just totally intrusive,
stalker.
gathering all of this stalker information about you, right? Well, I'm sorry to say we've got that now because that's what your phones are doing. That's what your devices are doing. And what many people don't realize, Sister Joy, is that you actually can control that. If you've downloaded an app, you've
'Cause I
probably,
don't know if I want someone standing over me.
yeah, I know. The only
Stuff
thing,
like that.
if someone's going to stand over me when I'm sleeping, they better have breakfast in their hands when I wake
Oh,
up. That's all I'm. But when you look at how your devices monitor this information, you always got to ask, well, how much does my phone actually know about me? Well, I'll tell you right now, they know your location, they know your shopping habits, they have some part of the conversations that you have and understand some of those conversations. They track your social media habits. And even more frightening, but most people should know this, is they also track your web history.
you know
And
what
so if
though?
you're
I
looking
think
things up,
that is, if you put it into perspective, I mean, first of all, when you put it into that perspective, someone is over me while I'm sleeping and they know all this information. That's already like, oh yeah, that's creepy. Now when you talk about habits, if they know our habits, our shopping habits, whatever habits it is. I mean, because let's get real here. Some of us don't even know our own habits, right? We're not even cognitive to that because we're like, oh, I didn't even realize I did that. So for someone else or something like a computer to know my habits better than I do, that's like eek, eek,
right?
eek,
Well,
eek.
well, and that's a wonderful point because when you talk about sometimes we don't even know our own habits, right? Because it's subconscious for us.
Yes.
It's
Mhm.
it's muscle memory. It's just something that we do repetitively, but we don't
Yeah.
even really know that we're doing it consciously. The difference is in the phones and the iPads and the other technology that's available in the world. They track the habits and catalog the habits. So that's why they're able, like to a very good point, they know better than we do what our habits are because we're doing
Yikes.
it subconsciously.
Wow.
They're taking
Mhm.
this information and they're storing all of that data into algorithms that they're using. Now, what is it that they're using this data for? Well,
Mhm.
for location, they want to know basically for a couple reasons. One, where you've been.
Mhm.
We use it on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're
Yeah.
using Apple Maps, if you're using Google
Yeah.
Maps, if you're using Waze, if you're using any kind of navigation tool, you need to have the location services on your phones turned on. But
Correct.
what you're going to realize is there are many more things than just those mapping applications that are tracking your location. And it's
Mhm.
important to understand why. We'll talk about that in a second. When we talk about shopping habits and advertising, I was joking with Sister Lulu not too long ago that we're having conversations privately. And then for whatever reason, I will walk back over to my phone or start scrolling social media
Yes.
and just surprisingly start to see ads for things
Mhm.
that we were talking about, or maybe that I texted her, but not that I've ever intentionally shopped for it.
Mhm.
That's just one way that it's actually capturing and understanding how it is that it can push what they consider to be relevant advertisement to us. And that's really frightening,
That
right? I mean,
is, it's like, ooh,
I
security
mean,
system in place. Is
Well, and
there?
there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that are out there, right? Who say, "Oh, be careful, the government's listening to you on the phones and blah 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 blah." Well, I mean, if you're not doing anything illegal, I don't really am too
Yeah.
concerned about the government listening, but I'm more concerned that, a local retailer is tracking every conversation and pushing me advertisements that I don't really need to see.
How they know I
Um,
need a slow cooker or,
exactly,
I'm like,
exactly.
wait a minute, there's one on sale? Actually.
So what I did to test this theory, and I hope Sister Lulu's not watching, but if she is, I walked up to her phone
Rewind.
and just turned on the phone and basically just started naming brands of different types of cycling equipment and cycles,
Oh, oh,
and like new shoes and a kit
uh-huh.
and new handlebars and new components for my bike. And I just kept naming the name brands on the phone to see if they would actually just start
Like,
miraculously
uh-huh.
showing up on her phone. And so sure enough, she starts scrolling. She's like, "Why does this stuff keep coming up?" And I said, "I don't know, but maybe Brother Robert has a birthday coming up." And but
Wow, and this
it
was on
didn't
her phone.
hurt.
This is not yours
Yeah.
because naturally, if it's on yours, because this is, something that targets your interest, you don't think anything of it.
Yeah.
But
Well, she had some stuff, and I, dare not say it on air, but some feminine related stuff
okay.
that started popping up on my feed, and I was like, why is this here? And it was a conversation that she was having. So a lot of that information is shared. So, our viewers need to understand that they have to be careful because that information crosses platforms, right? And of course, shopping habits. If you're shopping on Amazon, if you are
Mhm.
going through and shopping in an online store, I guarantee you that that information is being stored. If you're doing it on the web through a browser, like through your web browser, you probably see on the bottom where it says this site that you've entered wants you to accept cookies, right? And
Oh,
they
I love cookies.
yeah, these are not the chocolate chip kind
Okay.
or the peanut butter or the oatmeal raisin kind. These are little bits of, well, if anything, they're like breadcrumbs of data that's being stored about you and what you're doing on that website and where
Who
your
thought of
location
that? I
is.
mean, that's really
So
enticing. Like, do you
yeah,
accept cookies? Yes. Let
yes,
me see that
exactly,
sale.
exactly. It's not like, I think it'd be different if it said like, "Do you want to accept this broccoli?"
You I think so
People might
too.
not be so anxious to want to click, "Yes, I'll take it."
Exactly. So
But
most people would just say, accept all. Yes, all cookies.
yeah,
Okay.
so and when you say that, that means you're basically giving that website permission to download all of the information about what you're doing while you're there and where you're at. And in some cases, it's necessary. So I'm not saying that you should never download cookies because cookies also serve a good purpose. They'll actually also allow you to go back to that website if you wanted to log back in without having to remember all of your preferences and all of your settings because it remembers it through the cookies. But cookies are also used to be able to track what you've done. And you really have to decide whether or not that's something you want them to be able to do. And you could do that by website, you can do that by app. So watch your cookie allowances
What's your intake?
your cookie allowances
You know what?
when
So
you're
this can be adjusted though, right? What if I said, "Oh, I'm going to eat all the or I'm going to accept all the cookies." You
I'm
can
not
always
on a diet this week, so I'm gonna eat all the cookies. Well, no, you could go back to the website and we're gonna go through the different places where you can make these changes after the fact. So just because you may have made a spontaneous choice, an impulsive choice in the beginning, doesn't mean that you can't go back and change it. So you can always go back and fix that.
no.
So
Very good.
shopping habits and advertising, definitely that's one of the things that they track. What about conversations, right? We talk about conversations. I said like, oh, your phone and your iPad and your computer are always listening to you. And in a way, they actually are. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is because we've allowed them, we've given permission for them to listen to us. How? If you're using Siri, if you're using Alexa, right? If you're
Uh,
using any of these artificial intelligence assistants, these AI assistants, the
mhm,
microphones have to be on constantly because they're monitoring to hear the trigger word, right? When you
mhm,
say, "Good morning, Alexa," right? It
mhm.
automatically knows and
That's right.
responds to that. Same thing with Siri and same thing with, the Google AI assistants.
Yes.
So
So
we've actually allowed them to be able to do that. And in a way, we want them to do that because we want, as a society, I think it's gotten to the point where Now we've become so comfortable, we don't even have to pick up and type,
That's
right?
true. Oh, yes.
That's
That's not the truth.
my
Like,
phone is 10 feet away from me, and I can ask Siri to go look up a direction for me, or, "Hey, Siri, what's the temperature today?" And it'll
yeah.
come back and it'll tell me that, right?
Or you can
So
add something to your calendar schedule. I
it
mean,
completely, that's the whole purpose of it being an
y
artificial assistant, right? An
yeah,
artificial intelligence assistant. So when you do that, you also have to realize, even though they tell you that they're not storing any of those conversations, there are some apps where it
mm,
is recording that information. And we're going to see where that exists here as we kind of go through this presentation here in a little while. The majority of them, go out of their way to tell you, we don't track what you're saying. We don't record it without your permission. But the fact that it's actually running in the background constantly, just listening for that
yeah,
keyword, means that those microphones are active. So you just need
yeah,
to be aware of that.
yeah.
Oh, I went backwards. I went
Oh,
too far. What
I
happened?
have a question then. When it comes to our date, do you say data or do you say data? I know it's the same
Ooh.
thing.
It honestly depends on the mood that I'm in.
Really
So
depends on the
if I'm
cookies.
feeling if I'm feeling like I'm just having a conversation, it's probably going to be data. But if I want to sound intelligent, I say data.
Really, mine's
If I'm
reversed.
talking to extra people. Really?
Yes, if I want to sound intelligent, I say data.
I don't know,
But
but
I say data.
data just sounds more like I have a British accent. Like you've got to be
Really?
careful of your data. See, that's
Really?
the
I
same,
thought that they would say, "You've got to be careful with your data."
Oh man.
I thought the
I
opposite.
just I,
Oh.
I just think that having a British accent in general just makes me sound intelligent. That's why I
You know,
fake it.
how would you all okay, for our viewers out there, if we did a whole show, would you
In
guys
in in
listen?
in a British accent,
I know.
I think we'd be taken off air pretty quickly. But but i- yeah, if you guys are interested in us doing an entire
Let us
show
know.
in an accent, put it in the chat and we'll work it out.
We'll eat fish and chips. There you go while we're
Exactly.
at it.
What about social media? Social
Ooh,
media habits. You think what do you guys think? You think social media habits are being tracked for
oh,
our audiences watching?
no questions asked.
Come
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You
You
think
know
you
they're
think
tracking.
Facebook wants to know what I like and don't like?
Oh, they sure do.
Oh. Well, in what the bigger question is why? Why
Ooh, yes.
does
Yes,
it
why?
matter to
Right.
them, right? Well, it matters a lot. I mean, we talked about advertising as one of the big reasons why shopping habits are tracked, right? Location. We're going to talk about that in a little while. But more importantly, in on social media, because we spend so much time on social media,
Mhm.
that it knows that everything it wants to know about you, they can get through your social media habits. Where
Yes.
you shop, what you like, who your relatives are, who your friends are,
Oh,
uh, who you want to gossip about, who you want to sit and
yeah.
view pictures, and what celebrities you follow, and what movies you enjoy, what kind of music you listen to. Collectively, all of that information is being gathered, and just like what we talked about earlier about habits, right? We're doing
Mhm.
it subconsciously,
Mhm.
because you're just what the kids call it, death scrolling, right? Where you're just kind of going through your phone
Oh, that's a new
mindlessly, and
Mhm.
next thing you know, 3 hours have passed, and
Yikes,
you've
yeah.
you've liked 5,000 posts, and you've gone through all of these things, where all of that aggregate data is now being
Mhm.
stored and analyzed by
Mhm.
these algorithms, and is being pushed to advertisers, and being pushed to other companies. You do have the ability to stop that on apps as well, which we're going to cover here in a moment.
We definitely got to go into
Social media, definitely, that's something that does it. And of course, we mentioned web browsing history. Your web browsing history is an open book, so folks, just know that. You could try to be slick, and you can delete your cookies, like we mentioned, or delete your web history, but just know all of that information is stored on a server. So just because you deleted it off of your
that.
machine doesn't mean that it's off the server. So if somebody really wanted to find it, they're going to find it. That's
Yeah.
honestly how a lot of law enforcement is able
Mhm.
to find that information, because a lot of people, people who commit crimes, and then they looked up how they're going to commit the crime on their home computers, thinking that, oh, if I just delete my web history, all that's going to go away, and all they've got to do is go to the servers where
Right.
that data is stored.
That digital
and find
footprint,
you.
right? Isn't that what
Yeah,
it's
that's exactly what it's
yeah,
called. Very good, Sister Joy. It's
yeah,
it's your digital footprint that you leave behind, right? Or your
yeah.
digital fingerprints that you're leaving
Mhm.
behind because they can track you with that information. So just again, make sure that you're browsing the web cautiously and that you're following all the appropriate rules that you should, because that information is retrievable even if it's not on your machine any longer.
Yeah.
So now that we have sufficiently frightened all of our viewers
It
who
is.
are probably, as we speak, throwing their phones in the trash, I would imagine, um, don't, because there's a way for you to be able to manage that and still use your phones. Because there's no question, our phones serve an extremely important purpose in our lives. And we just need to be able to use them responsibly, right?
Yes.
So let's talk
Well,
about
let's learn.
what is it that I can do or where can I start, right?
Good point.
So I'm going to go through all of these different settings using an iPhone because that's predominantly what many of us here in studio have. Um, because we are an equal opportunity show, I will also show some Android
Okay.
screenshots as well.
I'm gonna
But
walk
the
I'm gonna walk
majority of this, if you're on your iPhone right now, so if you're on your iPhone right now, go ahead and take it out because everyone has to start with this, what we're going to call a privacy audit. Because before you can fix the problem, you need to know what the
yes,
problem is, right?
that's
So you need to understand where is all of this information stored. So let's start. If you're on an iPhone, and the majority of the iPhones, whether you're on the latest version of the operating system or maybe a few versions back, generally they should be in the same place. So this happens to be my actual phone. So please no judging on how much clutter there is on my screen and how many unread messages I have. Okay. So in fact, if you see that now and you did send me a message and I didn't reply, now you know why. It's
just
because I have that many messages that are sitting there waiting to be read. But when you're sitting there and you're looking at your settings, that's where you're going to start. So we'll start by going to your settings.
going
And when
inside.
you go to settings on your phone, the
Okay.
first thing you're going to do is you're going to need to scroll into the section down towards the bottom, which is kind of unfortunate that you've got to scroll to the bottom of the settings section to get there. You're going to
Okay.
find the section called privacy and security, right? Again, this is on an iPhone. When you
So
get to
I
the
went into
privacy and
settings. How
security
come I don't
section,
see that? Did they hide
you
it
go
from
to settings,
yeah, okay, I'm in settings and you
for the
said
tier
it
box,
is
and then scroll down. And if
oh,
you scroll down, it's down beneath
oh, I
like
see it now.
where screen time is, wherever your Face ID and passcode section
Okay,
is.
I see it now.
They've organized it. So go to privacy and security.
Okay.
Now, when you go to privacy and security, there's a whole menu item list of things
Mhm.
that you can check. And we're going to kind of go
Oh,
through. We're not going to go through all of them, but I want you guys to just get in the habit of actually getting here, right?
okay.
Because once you start getting here, you can start exploring. If you could spend 2 hours mindlessly scrolling through Facebook and Instagram, you can spend 20 minutes going through your privacy and security settings. Trust me, it'll be worth it. So you go through the privacy and security settings, and the very first thing when you start to scroll, you'll notice that there's location services, there's tracking. We're going to go through these individually, and then if you scroll down through privacy settings, you're also going to see the privacy settings about your photos. A lot of people don't realize how many of their apps actually access their photo library, and
Ooh,
you're going to be able to see that here in a second. We're going to talk about how you can tell what apps access your camera,
that's
how many
cool.
apps are accessing your microphone. Scary, right?
Yeah, I was like, "Wait a
So,
minute, it has my camera."
yeah.
Sometimes sometimes your camera just turns on, you're like, "Oh, how long has that been on?"
Hey,
But
look, somebody's watching me.
you know?
Talking about stuff. So this is where the hub on your iPhone is going to be for you to see what's tracking you and how
Mhm.
they're tracking you. So now this is the privacy and security section. So now let's go to the very first one, which is the most common, which is location services, right? When you
I'm
go to location services here, you'll notice that's the very first option in privacy security. There's a
okay.
toggle that says turn location services on or off,
Mhm,
right? If it's
mhm,
turned off, then you're never going to get presented with the question. It's just
mhm,
never going to be used, which I don't necessarily recommend because then that means you won't be able to use any of your map apps, right? You can't use Google Maps, you can't use Apple Maps, you can't use any of those
mhm.
navigation tools that you want to use. So I don't necessarily recommend turning it off, period.
Yeah, with
Um,
Google I think I tried turning this off at one point, I was like, "I can't do anything." So, yes.
So you do want to have it on. I mean, personally, I have it on. However, there are a couple things here that you can do. One, sharing my location. So if you are, let's say, on a with your family, and you want to be able to have your family know where you're at, you can
Mhm,
share your location. You can share your location indefinitely, or you
mhm,
could share it for an hour, or you can
mhm.
share it for a day. It's really up to you. You have control over that. And why would we want to share information? Maybe I'm driving someplace I've never been before, and I want to
Mhm.
be sure that for you, maybe you want to be sure Brother Billy knows where it is you're going, or you
Yeah,
want to keep track of, like, maybe the kids are out and you want to be sure that they're okay, so you want them to share their location. So there's the ability to do that, and you can
yeah.
control how much time there is that location service is
It's
active for,
it's a
right?
good tool, even in reverse, because my kids, like kids these days are great at knowing all this stuff.
Yeah.
I have a little thing to share. So me and Brother Billy, we told the kids, okay, we're gonna go out for whatever reason. I forgot what the reason was that we told them. And I think so, we're out together, we're gonna make a date out of it. And we get a text message, and one of the kids said something like, "You're eating at a restaurant." And we're like, "Wait, how do they know?" And he's like,
Oh, they know.
"They know. They know." And they are just, they're so funny. I love my
Well,
kids.
it's funny because when you're looking at how people use the sharing tool, right? And with our family, like, we set the tracking on for all
Yeah.
of us. So our entire family, we all know where we're at and who's
Mhm,
where, and it's peace of mind for me. Like I mentioned today,
mhm.
Sister Cat, my daughter's driving up to Pensacola with some of the rest of the Kadiwa for the
Yeah.
meet and greet that they're having in Pensacola. And for me, it's just a peace of mind in knowing that I can just take a look at my phone and seeing how close they are they almost
Yeah.
there, right? And when we went to, like, Universal Studios,
Mhm.
couple, like, a month or so ago, it was nice to be able to see, okay, where is everybody, where's the best place for us to meet, right?
That's
So
very nice.
seeing the location of everyone was important in that sense. It also could, sometimes be annoying, because then all of a sudden they're saying, you're saying, well, have you, you're waiting for them, we're supposed to meet at 8 o'clock, and then
Yes, in
they
the
say,
reverse.
well, are you guys almost here? And say, oh, yeah, yeah, we're on our way. And I says, well, no,
You
because it
didn't
says you're
leave
still
yet.
at home. Yeah. But I try to not do that, because then all of a sudden location services are going to get turned off, and then I'm not going to know where anybody is. So I try to play dumb. I'm like, hey, are you guys on your way? Knowing full well that I've looked on the phone and that they're still at home. But I try to be the nice guy, and I'm like, hey, are you on your way? You almost here?
Oh
So
goodness.
it's
That's
it's
too funny.
it's it definitely serves a good. uh,
It is good. It's
my,
good for the family. Definitely
Yeah,
good.
it's just the way that we do it for protection. But when you look at sharing my location down on the bottom here, you'll notice that you can change the settings. Now, every time you download an app, one of the things that the app will do initially, it's going to ask you two questions. One is, it's going to ask if you want it to be able to track your location, and the other is whether or not you want it to be able to track for advertising purposes, which we're going to talk in just a second. When
Mhm.
you download it and it says, do you want the app to track your location? You have options. No, never, ask next time or whenever it is that I'm sharing, or only track whenever it is that I'm using the app,
Mhm.
meaning that it's just going to always be on, right? So that's why you'll notice when you look at the location services menu, you can scroll through all of your apps that you have, and you could tell which ones have been turned on with the while using app option versus never versus ask. And ask means every time that the app opens, it's going to ask you, do you want it to track your
Mhm.
location? And then you also have the option for allowing it to use a specific location. So this way it can go ahead and specify, like, where you are even within the store. That's how precise it can be depending on the signal strength. Now, tracking is different. Now, if you remember back on the menu that we had earlier,
Mhm.
one of the options, so the first one, we'll go back to that menu.
Well,
The
okay.
first one was location services, which we just talked about. And the nice thing is, it tells you right here that there are 3 that are always on, and there are 74 apps that are activated while I'm using the app, meaning that it's only
Oh,
tracking my location when the app is open.
Mhm.
When you go down to the next section, which is tracking under privacy and security, this is where you're able to now allow or deny access for that app to
Mhm.
track your activity. And when we say tracking your activity, we're talking about using it as a way to identify and send advertising information. And
Mhm.
then if it's sending that advertising information, it's not limiting it only to that particular app. It's
Ooh.
also allowing you to track the history and share it with other apps and other retailers because, again, that's how these companies make their money. They make their money off of referral, right? So if they get a
Okay.
referral saying, "Hey, I saw Sister Joy was here and she bought this while she was at the store and she really likes this model of pickleball paddle or whatever,"
Ah,
then that's being
uh-huh.
sent to other manufacturers, other retailers, and they're able to now use that data to push advertisements to you. And you give permission for them to do that because one of the things that's going to pop up is, do you want to allow this app to track your activity? And again, you can say, please don't allow it, or yes. And unlike with the location services where it's, there's dependencies, right? Or not
Mhm.
dependencies, but there's some variability where you could say never, ask me each time, or use
Mhm.
only when I'm using it. With the tracking option, it's only turning it on, turning it off. And
Yes.
turning it on, turning it off is yes all the time or no, don't do it.
Mhm.
You'll notice that's here. Like one of the things that are on are both Facebook and Instagram for me. And what that does is it allows both of those apps, those social media apps, to track my activity on both of them, and it cross pollinates that
Yeah.
advertising information. So I'm seeing that information on both. So even though I'm in Facebook and I'm looking and I'm liking something, and there's a product that I like, it's being sent over to Instagram and any other company that I've given permission to be able to do that.
And this is under tracking because that's what I'm looking at right now. So
Exactly.
I have
So
Costco.
if you are
Mine
yeah,
says
oh, you'll
it
be
was
shocked. When you look through there were apps like, "Oh, I did not know that
yes,
I'm allowing so and so to track
no wonder.
my app activity." So
There's an
you wanna be
explanation.
sure. Yeah, you got to be sure that you know who's tracking and why. Um, and if you keep it on, make sure that you're doing it and giving it explicit permission to do that, right?
Ooh.
So here we turn that off. If you turn that off, then that means that there'll be no tracking at all of activity across any of your companies and apps and everything else.
And then
Another
so I have
thing,
to turn on where it says allow apps to request. So that would allow them to first request
the
versus
request, and you're always going to get a pop-up. Yeah,
okay.
it's by law they have to present you with a little dialogue box, and you have to tell it yes or no in
Yeah.
order for them to be able to start tracking. And again, just like with the location services, there's some benefits to it, and you just have to understand what it is you're signing up for
Okay.
when you say yes, let's do it. Another thing that's tracked, which I think a lot of people probably know, is the photos library. So when
Yeah.
you have photos, you oftentimes will be asked when you download an app, or if you've ever tried to upload a photo to like your social media, or if you wanted to upload a photo in attachment to a Gmail, like a message that you're sending, right? To Messenger, like Telegram or WhatsApp.
Uh-huh.
Whenever you go in to try to select a photo, if it doesn't already have permission to do so, it's going to pop up that little question that says, well, do you want me to give full access to all of your photos or only some photos?
Mm.
Or in some cases, only to be able to add photos. Like, for Chat GPT, I have it
Mhm.
set to only accept photos, but it's not, or to add photos to my photo library. It can't see my photo library.
Everything.
Right. So add photos only means that this app here, Chat GPT, when it generates an image, I can download it to my library,
Mhm.
but it's not allowed access to look at my library. I'm
You
not
know, I think
opening up my
that's
photo.
so important to note because, it is an extra step. And maybe if you're in the middle of working or trying to get a project done where you want to get all this, you're trying to like put a project together, put information together. It is, it's an extra step, and you're like, you're in the momentum, but I think these extra steps are so necessary because to have full access, when you put that in perspective, right? They have full access for your, for your, I mean, it's not like there's anything bad on there, but it's just for another party to have full access to your
Right.
photos or your
Your
information.
photos. I mean,
It's
because
worth
once they
extra
have
step.
access to your photos, they get to see where you've been. They get to see family members, and the facial recognition technology that's out there is so sophisticated today that this is the way that they can make a composite. They always talk about you've heard this thing called deep fakes, right? Have you heard of those? A
No.
deep fake is where they actually will take composite images and build an image of a person and basically recreate you using
Right.
artificial intelligence.
Oh,
So
okay,
there
okay.
will be another Sister
That's
Joy out there
that's
talking, and they make videos. They've done like this whole series of deep fake videos of famous celebrities saying things and promoting things that they would never promote. But it's
that.
because artificial intelligence has gotten so sophisticated, it can take all of these data points from our photos that are available online or through our library and build basically a model of you that looks exactly like you, can sound exactly like you, and can be very convincing. That's how frightening it is.
Yeah, that is.
So when you look at the photo access that you're providing,
Mhm.
you have to understand why are you doing it. Like for example, here you'll notice that I've given access to Amazon for my
Mhm.
library, and that's because if I have a damaged item, I take a picture of it and I want to upload it to Amazon. In order for me to be able to do that, I have to
Mhm.
give it permission to do so. Now, maybe after I've done it, I should go back in and turn that off, right? So
Yeah.
this is all a part of what we talked about earlier, doing this privacy audit that you've got to do. An audit, like with anything, is you going through and looking at all the stuff that you've got. When we go through here, you'll notice that you're giving full access, add photos, or even limited access. Limited access means I can only allow certain photos to be tagged and uploaded, but it can't see
Mhm.
the full library. And if anybody wants to jump in and take a look at my photo library, it's going to take them a while because, as you can see, I've got quite a few photos, over 87,000 photos for them to have to go through in order for them to see the full library. How
I
about your
know.
microphone? We
10.
talked about listening,
Ooh.
right? Listening. You listen the phone is listening every time you're asking it to activate your artificial intelligence assistant, whether it's Siri or Alexa. And if you've ever had to do like voice dictation, because that's one of the neatest things. We talked earlier
It is.
about how we've gotten so lazy with our phones that instead of typing to search for something, we want Siri or Alexa to do it for us.
I know.
Instead of me sitting here and typing and composing a message to you in Gmail or Telegram or a text, I just hit a microphone and ask it to compose it, right?
Yeah. It's
Every time you've asked it to compose that for you, that's what this does. It asks you, do you want your microphone to access, to be able to access, or you want this app to access your microphone? And if you've ever used, voice dictation in that app, it's going to ask you to activate the microphone. So as you kind of go through here again, you want to make sure that you're seeing what it is you're sharing, what information's being tracked, and whether or not that information is something you actually want to continue sharing. Right
yeah.
now, what else is it we can do? Well, you've got to be able to do this privacy audit and track this information. So even though now we know that things
Mhm.
like your photos, your microphone, your location, your habits in shopping and in browsing, all of that is being tracked with your permission. You can
Yeah.
turn it on, you can turn it off. But for the ones that you do actually have turned on, it's just like with anything, you want to be able to track, right? You've got to be
Mhm.
able to know who is tracking that information and how much of your information is actually being used.
Yeah.
There's a great tool in both Android and in iPhones, which I'll show you here, that you could turn on, which is called a privacy report, an app privacy report.
I
So if you
don't know.
go to your phone, yeah, go grab that phone, Sister Joy, pick that
Yeah,
up.
here I am.
All of you guys that are listening right now, I'm going to
Yes.
wait 2 seconds because I
And
want
we know
all of you. The one thing I want you to get out of today is to know how to access your privacy report. So
yes.
if you are now looking at your phone, log on to your phone and go to the settings screen and scroll down to privacy settings.
That's
And
right.
when you scroll down to privacy settings, you're going to notice in privacy settings, you have to scroll again to get
Mhm.
towards the bottom, and you're going to see something called an app privacy report.
App
You see
privacy.
that, Mr. Joy? Yeah, look for the
Safety
app
check.
privacy report. It
Oh, it's
should be
all the way here at
down.
the bottom. It's in
Yeah,
green.
it's
Mine's in
down towards the
green.
bottom. That's the third from the bottom, right?
It's
And if you
canceling.
click it,
Okay.
if it's the first time you've ever used your app privacy report, there won't be any data. Because in order for the app privacy report to actually gather the data, it's had to have been turned on and it's had to have been accumulating that information. So if it's currently turned off, go ahead and turn it on. And then in about 24 hours, you'll actually already begin to see what information is being tracked and by what applications. So I turned
Oh,
mine on,
scroll down. I can.
and
Whoa.
yeah,
Okay.
you
Goes
notice
through
here,
website
like,
network activity too.
right, tells you everything that's being accessed, who's accessing it, and when they last accessed it. So under the privacy report for me, for example, you can see here, and not only is it tracking the apps, it's also tracking all of the different sensors that we have. Because like our watches, our fitness trackers,
Hmm.
right? We have different wearables that we use. The data being pulled out of those is just as important, just as valuable and important that we keep it private if we don't want to share it. So you'll notice that my fitness app actually pulled data because I was working out.
Hmm.
And as recently as, well, at the time I did this 44 seconds before, it was pulling data, whether it's steps, because even when you're tracking on your Apple Watch, your step count, it's actually tracking that information. It was tracking stuff that was in my photos, and it will tell you who was tracking it. When you go through this list and you go down towards the bottom, which says app networks, and then you scroll up, that's what this next screen is. This one actually tells you that, the most active is Facebook. It's tried to access information 200 times, in Teams 106 times. And this is for a period, right? For whatever that period of time is. And if you click on each of these different apps, it'll tell you exactly what was being accessed and when.
Yeah.
So it's important, if you are going to have tracking turned on, if you are going to have location services turned on, and you want to give your phone the freedom to be able to access your personal data, you still have the ability to manage and control that by tracking it. Because at the very least, that's what you should be doing. So if you're not going to, turn off everything, then at least know what's being tracked and how it's being used. So go to privacy and security and then go down to app privacy report, and then you'll be able to access this information. And like I said, if you haven't had it turned on yet, then you'll
Mhm.
be able to turn it on and it'll automatically start tracking that information for you. And usually about 24 hours worth of data is what it needs in order for it to be able to start giving you some meaningful information. On an Android phone, since, again, we're an equal opportunity show, this is on my Google Pixel phone. You can actually go to the settings again, just like on an iPhone, and then scroll down to the bottom. I don't know why they put these things down at the bottom. I mean, to me personally, I think these things should almost be at the very top because they're
Yes.
the
I mean,
first thing I
every
want
time
to
you
know.
told me to scroll down to the bottom, I'm like, where is it? There's all this other stuff
Yeah.
in
So
here. Okay.
exactly in between. So if you go to settings on your Android device and you scroll down, you're going to notice there's a security and privacy section right here. And when you get to the security and privacy section, automatically it'll take you here. And one of the nice things about Android is it gives you an automatic reminder whether or not there are updates
Oh, that's
in the
nice.
security and privacy section because that is
Oh,
related. It's one of the
yeah.
tips. So one of the tips is that if you don't have auto updates turned on your phones, turn them
Hmm.
on because the way that that's being used is the manufacturers of your phone always monitor to see if there's vulnerabilities or
Hmm.
different things, what we call exploits that are out there that now have been newly discovered. And each time a new exploit or vulnerability is discovered, they turn around and they build another defense mechanism for it. But that defense mechanism is only going to be able to help you if you download the most recent version of the software, right?
Point.
So make sure you always have the updates turned on. I know they're a pain. Sometimes that means you've got to restart your phone.
Mm.
Most of them will do it overnight while you're sleeping. So even if you're, in the middle of the night at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it'll automatically update for you. Here on your Android device, it'll tell you that there is an update that was available,
Mm.
and just go ahead and do that. I don't use my Android that much, which is probably why it's telling me there's an update because I didn't automatically update it. But once you've done that, you can update the device. And if you scroll down, again, we're in security and privacy, you'll notice that they have something called, rather than an app report, it's called a privacy dashboard. But it's the
Dashboard.
same thing.
Same.
Tomato,
Yeah.
tomato, right? Data,
Data,
data.
data.
It's the data. Android calls it a privacy dashboard versus an app privacy report on an iPhone. So you'll get the same information if you go to the privacy dashboard on your Android device, telling you what apps are accessing it, how they're using it, when was it last accessed. And it's just important that you stay on top of this on a regular basis. So this way you can go back and make those changes to the settings. So this way you're keeping you and your family's information
So you all do
safe.
this
Okay.
now. This is really important. This is just
Yeah.
such valuable information for all. I mean, for everyone. It takes time, but I think it's necessary.
It is. It is. And like I said, you're going to spend 2 hours scrolling through social media. You can spend 20 minutes going through your phone, locking it down, making sure that the settings are set the way that they want. And at the very least, knowing what's tracking, your
Hmm.
information and how that's being used. But, your apps and your phones aren't the only way that people's privacy is being invaded on their phones, because we've talked about this in previous shows about scammers, right?
Yeah,
And scammers have gotten super sophisticated. You always hear about like phishing emails. We talk about that all the time. I think we had an entire show
yeah.
on just phishing scams and how you can avoid phishing scams. But a lot of those things have carried over to our smaller, more portable
And
devices like our cell
just to be
phones.
clear, this is not the fishing where we're going out to the pier, taking the
Yes,
fishing
yes.
pole.
We're not.
It's
No,
not
it's
that
a
kind of
different. It's a
fishing.
different kind of fishing. It's just like we were talking about cookies, right?
You know?
These are not tilapia or trout fishing or red snapper. This is criminal activity type fishing.
Yes,
And
there you go.
when we look at the phishing scams, they happen both on your email, but they'll also happen on your phones via text, because we have
Mm,
so many different ways to communicate, to stay connected with people today. And a lot of these scammers, they exploit and take advantage of that because they happen to know that we spend so much time on our devices. And
mhm,
what they're relying on is the people who aren't really monitoring or paying attention, right?
mhm.
So let's say, for example, the on the left hand side of the screen you see there, you just got a text from some random number on your phone. I don't know what your habits are, Sister Joy, and it just says hello. What would be your first instinct?
If I don't know who it's from, I just leave it because
There you go.
normally, yeah, if it's not a registered contact, for me, if it's important, they'll say more than hello. Like, or at least identify themselves, right?
Exactly.
Hello, this is, whoever it is. I'm just making sure, even if it was someone, I mean, if I'm reaching out to someone, I would say, hey, it's Joy.
Right?
This is my number. I just wanted to make sure that this is yours, something like that. But if it's only
Exactly. I could.
hello, I wait.
Well, it's just common courtesy. I think it's gotten to the point now that because we communicate digitally so
Hmm.
often, that we'll we had a show on etiquette. Remember that? We talked about like
Hmm.
what's your digital etiquette. And
Hmm.
and I think it's etiquette to, if you're texting somebody for the first time, which means it's likely you're not in their contact list, that
Hmm.
I introduce myself.
Yes.
And so, hey, this is Robert. We met at the Home Depot, and I just wanted to reach out. This is my number, right? So it's a way of them making that connection versus someone who just randomly gets a text that says, "Hey, hello," right?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
um, some other people get more sophisticated, and you'll notice this was like from March 20th. This is from a month ago. I get an average. I think I told you pre-show, like 2 to 3 of these a day
That's a
from
lot.
whether it's from WhatsApp or my cell phone, from my iMessage, or
Yes.
from Telegram. And the reason for that is because even though I practice safe surfing,
Oh, I like it.
and it's not the
You know.
kind with a board, but I practice safe surfing, um, we aren't in control when our numbers get leaked,
Hmm.
because we've, like I'm with AT&T, and it's
Me too.
publicly known that AT&T's,
Yes.
library of numbers were compromised not too long ago, and those numbers that were compromised all ended up on the dark web.
Sure did.
And when they end up on the dark web, that means that now criminals have free access to these records, which, for no fault of my own, are now
Hmm.
available. So
Hmm.
what happens is that these criminals, these scammers, are using that data to fish and see if they can actually. They're using this bait, to stay with the fishing analogies. They're using this bait to try to see if they can reel me in, right? I
And
learned
it's
all these
real.
puns from you, Sister Joy, right? Okay.
You're so
So
funny.
when they send these messages out, that's literally what they're doing. That's why it's called phishing, because they're sending
Mhm.
hundreds, if not thousands, of these messages, and all it takes is for 10% of these people to reply, and
And that's it.
they're
And
able
that's
to go
key.
with their business.
You just to that's what they're waiting for. That's what they're
Mhm.
fishing for, y'all. They want a reply or a response. And that's like,
Right.
yes.
We talk about that. Like, what do you do when somebody randomly texts you and it's not somebody that you know? I think you and I are very similar, and I don't know, how do you guys feel? Our audience that's viewing, do you answer unsolicited or messages from people that aren't in your contact list, or what do you end up doing with them? Because they get more and more sophisticated because I think they know that people don't do that anymore. So we'd
Yeah.
love to know, how many of you guys actually are any of our viewers out there in the habit of actually answering just a text with no context or anything to it?
Or you know what?
But
Parents, do you know if your children are doing
yeah,
that? And I have to say, I'm one of those parents. It's not something I would think of because naturally I won't respond. But I know I have my kids, they entertain it. They're like, "Hello, who are you?"
right.
Or who are you?" And I think it's important for us parents to, to be aware, like, "Oh, we got this is something we need to talk about with our kids."
We need to teach the kids to be very, very careful and to use their words.
Mhm.
This kind of activity is very sus. See, I'm
Yes.
using words that we learned before, right?
Yes, it
It's very
is.
sus. It's
Not
very
sus,
suspect.
sus, but sus,
It's
yes.
sus. It's like
Sus naman.
so and the reason why it's important to know this because they get more sophisticated. If you take a look at some of these messages here, like they
Mhm,
sent one, and then the next day they sent another one asking specifically if this is somebody's phone. So, at some point you might get annoyed and you go, no, this isn't Jimmy's phone. Well,
mhm,
I've just given them exactly what they wanted was they just want to know, is this a valid number? Because when
mhm,
those numbers get compromised, right, and they're leaked, they're
mhm,
storing hundreds of thousands of phone numbers in the dark web, and they
mhm,
buy these numbers in bulk, and they use bots to just auto dial. These are all bots. There's not some guy sitting in a call center someplace individually texting us.
mhm.
This is
Yeah.
all coming through a bot that's sending 1,000 messages, a minute to all of these phone numbers, waiting for somebody to answer. And
Mhm,
even though your answer may be what you think is, oh, I know this is a scam, or I'm going to call them out,
mhm,
don't do it. Because when
mhm.
you do that, then they now check the box that says this is
Yep.
an active number.
Now
Even
this
if you
applies
say,
for
oh, this
text,
isn't,
right? This
yeah.
applies for text message and even phone calls.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Phone
Because
calls.
they all want to know. And it's gotten to the point where even my voicemail message now, I've made it generic because, my voicemail message used to say, hey, this is Robert. Sorry, blah, 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 blah.
Ah,
Then that's all they need to know, right? Because they call, they hear the message, they know that that's an active number, and they know who the person is.
right, yeah.
And the way that they're tracking that information now is, and these are iPhone messages here on the left, and here on the right, you'll notice these are messages that I pulled actually from Telegram.
Mhm,
And Telegram actually seems to be even more of an issue because of just the massive amount of users that are on the platform.
mhm,
But the one thing that can always, because some people will say, well, I might have like relatives or in the Philippines or somebody that's texting me through a Telegram or a WhatsApp, and that could be legitimate, and they just didn't introduce themselves or they just didn't, put their name or who they were. One thing to always look for in Telegram, it does it really well. It tells you when the number was registered, right? And
Oh.
you'll notice in each of these instances, these are brand new numbers. And if they're brand new contact numbers, it's really likely that these are people that are scamming and looking and phishing for people to respond. So
Wow.
immediately when I see that, and they're going to ask questions like, how was your day? But look at this one. It even knows my name.
Yeah.
So again, they can identify because there's just massive amounts of data that are out there.
So
And
how
it'll
do you
ask
know
these
again?
innocuous
How do you know if
questions.
it's a new number?
Well, the way that you know it's a new number is by looking at the message, if it's a brand new message, and you pull it down. And if it's a new account and they're not in my contact list, this is something that Telegram recently instituted. It'll tell you the date that that number was registered and that it's
Uh-huh.
not an official account. These are all red flags that tell you that these are scams. Because if it's a brand new number, it's not in my database, then this person is messaging me and asking me to respond I
I
just
get it
block it.
because I never get that far. Usually, if it's like a hello and it's
And you can swipe
I just
left and
delete.
just
Yes,
hit
I do.
the trash can, right? And that's the perfect thing to do. That is the perfect thing to do, Sister Joy. If you see a message, it's something you're not familiar with, swipe it to the left and just go ahead and immediately delete it, because that way it keeps you out of trouble. But if you are not sure, you
Mhm.
can go ahead and just preview. You don't have to even open it, because remember, with things like Telegram and WhatsApp, if you open it, they get the double check mark. And the double check
Oh,
mark tells that user that you've actually opened the message. If you just press and hold the message, it'll actually bring up a preview. It does not give you the double check. So that way you're able to go in and still decide whether or not you want to block this user. So, and if you're going to block them, it doesn't matter, because at that point that number is unreachable. But it doesn't matter, because they're going to go through and use a different number, right? Some other examples that I wanted to show you here were this one. This was really frightening. Look at the one on the left.
that's a
The
whole
one on the left,
monologue.
they actually said, "Are you the presenter from the Florida satellite studio?" So they actually went through and took the time to
Wow.
figure out not only like who I am, but they're trying to come up with some way to have some connection, right? And some
Mhm.
response. And
Yeah.
again, if it's somebody who is a legitimate person trying to reach out, they would introduce themselves. Hi, this is so and so.
Yes.
I wanted to just know if this is who you are.
Mhm.
And again, this was a recent message, right? Just from April 19th, just
Wow.
recently, right? So
Wow.
again, things like this, both on iPhone or on your Telegram, there are ways for you to block them or to send them and report them as junk. And if you
Mhm.
report them as junk, it automatically will report it as junk and delete the message for you. But
Mhm.
two scams that I urge you all to be very careful of are the more recent scams that invite you
Mhm.
to either apply for a job that's non-existent or to track a package that you didn't order.
Yes,
I
it's
have
real.
close family that has been a victim of this. That
Yeah,
you
and
click
it's
on it,
easy to be a victim of this, that's why we
yeah,
have let's hopefully this
and
helps
it's
all of us.
yeah, it's these are just some of the more common things that are happening today. But these scammers are very sophisticated, so they're constantly changing their tactics. They're constantly making it more sophisticated, and they're literally digging up and scouring the web for information about each of us in order for them to be
They're
able to
targeting our
build a
habits and our emotions. Those are
right.
just like and things that sometimes
Yeah.
we're not even aware of.
Exactly. And one of the things that they're doing is if they're tracking this information through your app activity on your
Mhm.
phone or through, your web browsing history that they may get access to because of a leak,
Mhm.
then now they're building a profile for you.
Mhm.
And if they
Mhm.
build that profile for you, they have enough information to try to build a conversation that may just get you to respond to it. And we're urging you, please be
Mhm.
cautious. Please be sure that if you're texting with someone, you know who they are. They're either a verified contact or they've introduced themselves,
Mhm.
and don't fall victim to, well, I know this is a scam, so I'm just going to go ahead and mess with them, or I'm just going to go ahead and kind of play games with them and call them out and let them know that I know
Mhm.
that they're a scam. And all you're doing is you're falling right into their trap, because
Yeah,
that's what they
gave
wanted to do.
gave them permission.
Yeah,
They
because
yeah,
literally at that point, the
yeah,
minute that you answered, whether you told them off or whatever, they
mhm,
just checked the box and said, "Yep, that's a good
exactly,
number,"
yeah,
because they actually responded to it. So, just delete them. It's not worth it. And the more that you do that, the more of these messages you're going to get, because now all of a sudden they know that that's an active number. So,
mhm,
we're hoping that you
stuff.
guys online were able to at least get some information from today, at the very least, that it's made you a little bit more aware that you have to be extremely careful with the privacy, not just for you but your family, both
Mhm,
on your devices and when you're cruising the web.
yeah,
And we'll be doing another show with more of a deep dive around different scams to protect your family as well.
very
This one's
important.
focused mostly on your devices, and we use them every day, so please be cautious. But
Mm.
Joy, looks like we've dropped down to the bottom of the hour again. We are now the fastest 60 minutes on radio.
And we can keep going.
We're always so grateful, though, for everybody that joins and watches us. And we want to thank everyone that's tuned in today here on INC Radio Florida. But before we go, we wanted to, of course, thank our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo Vimanalo, our CEBSI CEO and President, Brother Angelo Iranio Manalo, who we also want to wish a very happy birthday to. And then also to Brother Emmanuel Ndaya, our executive producer, and Brother Wally Tarai, our station manager, and to all of our viewers that tuned in today. We thank you so much. Stay tuned because INC Radio Washington, D.C. is coming up next.
This is INC Radio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or